All right, great, thanks. So everybody's here today because you were in some shape, form, or fashion involved in the storm that came through on May 6 and 7. This is a federally declared disaster. It took a while for us to get there, but we're there now, and this means that you get the opportunity to get some expenses reimbursed for costs associated with it. The number that you're going to see assigned to this is 4922. 4922. This is, you'll see it in all of your email traffic, everything else, because right now I've got 18 disasters open. 2 of them are active, one of them are possible to get another one this year, so it gets a little confusing trying to figure out which disaster we're talking about. So you'll see 4922 on everything. The incident period, again, May 6th through 7th. So any of the damages that you're claiming has to happen in that time frame. And the declaration date is June 30th. So the reason that's important is you have 30 days to put in your request for public assistance, RPA. That deadline is July 30th. My challenge to each and every one in this room is to do it today. When you go into Grants Portal, it takes 60 seconds. Especially if you've already been in the Grants Portal, have all your information that'll auto-populate into that. It doesn't take any time at all. Please get it knocked out. Get that first step over with. And timelines are very important. You'll be in contact with a MEMA person, a FEMA person. In some instances, some of our friends from SBA, they're all there to help you. They're all there to answer your questions and move this process forward. So you're going to be staying in constant contact with them. If you have any questions or don't know who you're supposed to contact, my information's here. It's mseiler@mema.ms.gov. You can contact me, and I will be happy to push it on to somebody else. So please don't hesitate if you need to. And again, be sure to add that 4922 into it. That way we know what we're talking about from the beginning. Counties declared for 4922 right now is Franklin, Lincoln, Lawrence, and Lamar. It's got a fairly small footprint for this disaster. And we're thinking that this is going to be a fairly smooth transition. What does that mean to you is that being smooth, getting the projects written, and getting us our documentation that we need to keep the auditors happy, and we can get reimbursements quicker, hopefully. That's the plan. Overview of what we're going to discuss today is public assistance, and we're going to talk about the definition and what each person's role in it, the applicant, the facility, the work, and the cost. So public assistance defined as supplemental financial assistance to state and local governments and certain private nonprofit organizations for response recovery activities required as a result of a federally declared disaster. We talked about that earlier. When it becomes federally declared is when those federal dollars gets released, and it also has to happen in that time frame. The funding is at a cost share at this point in time for this is 75%. We'll get into the cost shares and what that means here in just a minute. In the minutes now. So in this disaster, it's 75%. I don't even want to really get into it. Sometimes it may increase depending on the size of the disaster and the complexity, but I do not see this one going above 75%. That's the federal cost share. Now, the state of Mississippi has elected to share some of the non-federal cost share with the applicants, meaning that we're going to split that 50%. So 12.5% of that 25% will be reimbursed to you from the state of Mississippi. The local share is going to be that 12.5%. I will say this, that if you're a private nonprofit, there is no state cost share change in that. So it'll be the straight 75%. Public Assistance Program assists in the restoration of a community infrastructure as a result of federally declared event. It is a supplemental cost reimbursement program with specific eligibility requirements, and FEMA share of eligible costs will be available to the recipient. We'll talk about name and nomenclature here in a minute, the recipient being MEMA in this instance, for disbursement to the applicants. Public assistance is not assistance to local populations for damages to private homes, commercial properties, or local businesses, etc. This includes farms. This includes anything that is not a public entity. The partnership in this is defined as FEMA manages the program, provides technical assistance, approves grants. MEMA, or the recipient, educates applicants, works with FEMA to manage the program, implements and monitors grant awards. And applicant, or the subrecipient, identifies damages, provides documentation, manages funded projects. So MEMA is the recipient. You behind the tables are going to be the subrecipients in this. But most of the time we're going to refer to yourselves as an applicant, and of course MEMA is MEMA and FEMA is FEMA. So this is how it begins to decide what's eligible and not. So you have to be an eligible applicant. Being in this room pretty much defines that you are an eligible applicant. It has to be an eligible facility, and then it has to be eligible work and cost. So best way and easiest way I can describe it is you have to be legally responsible for it. You as an eligible applicant has to be legally responsible for the upkeep, the maintenance, the improvements to that facility so it can be an eligible work. So the cost at the end of the day, it has to be reasonable. And we'll discuss that in a little more detail in a minute. Eligible applicants, that'd be the state. Declared counties, you have to be individually declared county to be a part of it. The city, town, villages within the declared county, other political subdivisions of the state, Native American tribal governments, tribal organizations, and again, certain nonprofit organizations. To get in a little bit more definition of the private nonprofit, or P&P, we'll make it easy on me, this is what we're going to refer to it as from this point on. To be an eligible P&P applicant, the P&P must show that it has a current ruling letter from the IRS granting tax exemption under 501c, D, or E, or Internal Revenue Code of 1954, or documentation from the Mississippi Secretary of State sustaining it as a non-revenue producing nonprofit entity doing business under state law. Two categories of P&P would be critical and non-critical. Critical examples would be a fire department, some of your volunteer fire departments, medical treatment such as your private ambulance services, power and water, sewer utilities, that would be your co-ops. I believe I saw some water associations here. Communication system, educational facilities. This is going to be critical services. Non-critical services would be examples of would be museum, community centers, libraries, houses of worship, senior citizens, zoos, daycares. So a non-critical essential P&P must first apply to a small business administration and have a ruling by them prior to applying. The facility, if it's an eligible facility, must be as a direct result of the event declared on 6-7 of May. Located within the presidentially declared area, we talked about that being in the county that was on that map, be the legal responsibility of the eligible applicant, and not be under the authority of a federal agency. That would be a post office. So they're funded federally. This is duplication if they would apply for this. So they cannot be a part of this program. So types of work that are eligible. You'll hear things called categories if you're not familiar with them. The major ones are A through G. The emergency categories would be A and B. A is debris removal. B is emergency protective measures. The permanent work categories are C through G, C being roads, bridge systems, D being water control facilities, E being buildings and equipment, F being utilities, and G being a catch-all, being other. Generally that's parks, baseball fields, sporting places, beaches, things like that is where this is going to fall under. Emergency work categories A and B. FEMA is authorized to provide public assistance funding for emergency work, including emergency protective measures and debris removal. Emergency work is that which must be done immediately to save lives, protect property, protect public health and safety, and eliminate or lessen the immediate threat of additional damages. The biggest expense in most disasters is going to be this. It's going to be this Category A, debris removal. I think it's a good time for me to kind of break up what's a little confusing between Category A and B on debris removal. If what debris is being taken to a permanent place where its final disposition will be, that is Category A. If you are cutting trees out of a roadway, pushing it to the right-of-way, just so you can open that roadway up, it's not at a final disposition. It's not where it's the last place it's going to be. That's going to be B. So biggest thing to keep in mind, did it go to its final resting place? Yes, A. Did you just clear a roadway, push it out of the way? It's going to have to be picked up and dealt with again. Yes, it's going to have to be dealt with again. That's a B. That's the simplest way I know how to put that. That's one of the bigger confusions between the two. Debris removal is eligible. It eliminates the immediate threat to life, health, and safety. We can see why that's necessary. It eliminates an immediate threat of significant damage to improved property. It ensures economic recovery of community and provides a benefit for the community at large. Do, in Category A, contact MDEQ for staging sites. If you haven't already done so, have MDEQ approve where you're going to stage this debris. They've got all kind of rules and regulations. So be sure that you're in contact with them. Certify the trucks. Make sure that they have a capacity already designed and a placard that shows that. This comes into play when we're having to measure it and quantify it. So it's not a hard process. We're happy to do it and help you get through it, but if you go through a contractor, they know the deal. They can do it for you. Monitor your debris. Now, there's monitoring companies that you can go out there and hire. You can also do it yourself. We're happy to help you get you some documentation, some of the information to monitor it yourself, and just reach out to us if that's the way you're wanting to go, so we make sure we do it the right way from the beginning. Activate your pre-position contract. In a perfect world, and you have planned everything like the way you should. I use a friend of mine in Rolling Fork that when that tornado hit, he didn't know which way was up. He didn't know. Had lost so many friends and family, and has been spent all night trying to help everybody in that community. When I saw him that next morning, he was just he didn't know his name. And if you have pre-thought out and gotten a contractor on a standby contract, you have them on speed dial. You're calling them within 30 minutes to an hour after the event, saying, "Hey, we got hit bad. I'll see you here in 24 hours." And then you go to do something else. That's my sales pitch for pre-position. I'm a big believer in it. My friend in Rolling Fork is a big believer in it now. So if you have that, go ahead and get that contract moving and have those people coming in to do that work. Bid out debris work beyond 30 days. So we'll take a second and talk about contracting. I'm getting a little bit ahead of the horse, but since it brings it up, we'll go ahead and talk about it. You will never find anything in writing that says what is an emergency time frame for a contract. It just says emergency. And the definition of that being that it has to take place, it has to be an emergency contract because you do not have time to do proper procurement. So I say 30 days because most things can be properly procured in 30 days. You can advertise, you can receive your bids, you can go ahead and let that contract and have them in, and that's 30 days. Now, and that's saying if you go on an emergency contract for 45 days, will that be forgiven or allowed? Probably so. But I know 30 days. I can sell 30 days. 45 days I feel comfortable with. 60 days feel comfortable with. But if you want me to put something in writing, it's 30 days. So just keep that in mind. If you stay within that 30 days, you're in good shape. You'll be able to answer any questions that you have when it comes up to why did you go on an emergency contract for 30 days. Don't. Don't stage debris wherever you want it. We go back to that MDEQ thing. You have got to get blessed by them. And if they don't bless you, then you just wrote the check for it. Don't just do it wherever you want. They've got rules and regulations. So please get with them and make sure you're doing it right. Don't place debris in unpermitted sites. They pretty much go hand in hand. Continue with an emergency contract beyond 30 days. We've covered that. And ignore debris we're monitoring. What's that mean? If your monitor comes to you and says, hey, they're getting off the right-of-way, and you know your contractor picking up debris is getting off the right-of-way, don't say, okay, whatever. Go get with that. Make sure, verify it with yourself and get with that contractor and say, no, bring it back. You can't get out that way. If you say, hey, they're calling loads heavy, much heavier than they are, listen to them. Go deal with it. They are your employees. Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be. Because at the end of the day, you guys are going to be the ones that could get on the short end of that stick and not being reimbursed for it. Moving on to category B, that's actions taken by applicants before, during, and after a disaster to save lives, protect public health and safety, and prevent damages to improve properties, including search and rescue, fire and flood fighting, security, such as barricade, fencing, and law enforcement, and the pushing of debris. Other than flood fighting and firefighting, I think everybody here has been involved in that. You've had to do search and rescue. You've had to cut the debris off the roads. You've had to barricade and put fencing out, law enforcement usage. So that all falls under category B. Okay? We're going to get into permanent work. This is things that fall into a different category. It's got a different time frame on it. We'll go into what time frames are for categories of work here in just a minute, but this is kind of a break in different types of work. This is categorized through C through G, and eligible permanent work must repair, restore, or replace the disaster-damaged facility in accordance with regulations, must restore to pre-disaster design capacity and function in accordance with applicable codes and standards, must be required as a result of the declared disaster, and may include cost-effective hazard mitigation. So essentially, FEMA is an insurance policy. So just like your insurance provider, they're going to, your house gets burned, they're going to put it back just like it was, or they're going to cost it at putting it back just like it was, cut you a check and say, all right, that's where the difference is, by the way. They'll cut you a check and give it to you. I've got to do it on reimbursement. But it's got to go back like in kind. If you lose a vehicle, you've got to replace it like in kind, or you just get the money that would replace it. You can't lose a Nissan Altima and then decide your insurance company needs to pay for a Chevrolet Tahoe. It just doesn't work that way. Now it doesn't say you can't go get one, but you're not going to get reimbursed for the full amount of a Tahoe when you lost a Nissan. So. Same thing happens, and we'll get into a little bit more discussion about that here in just a minute. Biggest thing here that we're going to talk about is it has to have happened because of that May 6, 7. I'm trying to avoid 6, 7 because we're all tired of that. It has to happen in that time frame. It's got to be as a direct result of this event. Category C, this is going to be the roads, the bridges, and the drainage structures. So anything that's in that transportation path, this is where this category is going to fall. I don't know how much category C you've had as a direct result, but this is kind of when we step out of that direct and go to indirect. Indirect could be where the debris removal happens. So if the debris removal takes place and they are tearing up roads doing that work, then this could be something that's potentially reimbursable for expenses. Okay? My suggestion is before you start moving debris, if we're not already past that point, go ahead and get in the area, start videoing these roads that these trucks are going to be on prior to them being there, because what it will inevitably happen is we're going to get somebody that goes to Google Earth, pulls up the little Google car track, does all the videos, and when we say the debris caused this damage to the road, they're going to look it up and say, no, that road was damaged. Go ahead and take videos of it. Look at it. Have it something, that you can say apples to oranges, right? So that you know exactly pre-debris operation what that road looks like. So you have an idea and you can compare it. Like I said, this is everything in that transportation corridor, that structure, from roads, road surfaces, bays, shoulders and ditches, bridges, decks, abutments, wing walls and approaches, drainage structures, that's culverts and drains. Okay? Category C, or big reminder on this, if it's a federal aid road, it does not fall into this program. Okay? This goes back to that whole federal involvement. If you receive federal funds, you can go back to FHWA and try to get an emergency funding through them to repair that. So if an FHWA road is one of the roads that you want to claim under Category C, it doesn't need to be on the FHWA map. If it is, then you'll have to go to FHWA, not FEMA for it. This is another example of the key of the map. If you have any questions, get with us. We can get you that link and let you be able to drill down into that. Category D is going to be, sticking with the letter D, we'll go with dams. This is going to be pumping stations, drainage station, irrigation, anything outside of that road structure that's going to have culverts and everything else. But think of it as the dam category that has all the water control. Don't believe we're going to have to see that in this disaster. We'll move on. Category E, may see some of this. This is any of your buildings that you have legal responsibility. If it got damaged during this event, you can claim that. If you lost equipment or you lost a vehicle or vehicle damages, this can be claimed under here. Cost, building and contents. There's a 50% rule if it's damaged over 50%, and I'm going to tell you now, if the roof's still standing and the walls are still standing, it's going to be hard to get 50%. So, but there is, if it's damaged over 50%, according to FEMA, then they will replace it. Codes and standards, you can bring it up to codes and standards. For example, if it was not ADA compliant before, you can make it ADA compliant when you're doing your repairs. Equipment falls into this category, vehicles and supplies. Okay? That will reduce, if FEMA says you got $100 obligated for this damages and you got $25 in insurance, or let's say $50 in insurance, they're going to reduct down to $50. They're going to take the $50 off the top. Your new obligated amount will be $50. Now, if you ended up getting, the insurance company says, we don't want it, y'all can keep it, you can do salvage value. You can go take it for salvage. You take it to the scrap yard. You get $25. Now you're down to $25. $50 from insurance, $25 for the salvage. Now you're looking at $25 being the eligible amount. So all that saying, FEMA will be the last source of funding. They will make sure any other funding that you can legally get gets taken out of that final obligated amount. Category F, that would be the utilities, mostly private nonprofit in this case in our area. Power generation, distribution centers, water and sewer treatment plants, telecommunication systems. Damage must be disaster related. I mean, I've said it several times now, it must be important. It's got to be related to that disaster. Category G being the catch-all park recreation category, playgrounds, swimming pool, ballparks, piers, beaches, would fall under this. There is a Category Z. This is the management cost, PW. If you're an applicant, you're eligible to get a Category Z. This is a cost that you yourself will incur for doing this work. Right now, what you're doing is qualifies as time that you can get reimbursed for under Category Z. So keep up with it. This is something that we will have to track and get invoices and proof that your time was spent on it. This is 100%, where I said 75% on all these other categories. This is funded at 100% by the federal government. And record keeping, as far as I'm concerned, if you just have a calendar that you write down 4 hours this day, 2 hours this day, 3 hours this day. That just something showing me how you're tracking your time and spending it towards this eligible work is fine. I just need something. Also, we're going to need payroll policy, payroll records, and proof of payment, whether that be a direct deposit receipt or paper check, copy of the paper check. Cost eligibility. To be eligible for reimbursement, costs must be reasonable and necessary to accomplish eligible work. A cost is reasonable if, in its nature and amount, it does not exceed that which would be incurred by a prudent person under the circumstances prevailing at the time the applicant makes the decision to incur the cost. So, there is different ways to check to see if things are eligible. So if you got, we'll go over different types of expenses, but say you're using some equipment that you own as the applicant, there's a cost code for that. We can tell you how much the value per hour a piece of equipment costs. That's the wet cost. That's the fuel. That's the maintenance. That's everything else that you can claim towards that. If you're wondering, you're going to get somebody that's local to do some work with some equipment, maybe call around. If it's going to be a small amount that you're going to be, getting into this agreement with that person, and it's a small amount, maybe call around and get some ideas of what a D3 or D4 dozer costs to run per hour, and make sure it just kind of lines up with what they're doing it. Now, if it goes over the state procurement law and you have to get bids, then that's the best case scenario, because you can't argue proper procurement when you're getting multiple bids in and you're taking the lowest one, right? It is what it is for the market. Rental is set, right? You go to Puckett, you go to CAT, you go to anybody, that rental is set on that. So get with your lawyer, let them know, make sure that you're staying okay in procurement, that you don't get caught into that. I'm getting ahead of the horse here, but we just want to make sure that the cost is eligible, not just really way off in left field. Because if you've been in this business long enough, you're going to see that applicant that somebody comes up and, hey, I can run a D4 for $750 an hour back 20 years ago, and yeah, that doesn't pass. It doesn't pass the test. And they don't care. Applicant, FEMA's going to be writing me a check for it. I don't care. I'm going to pay it. So, no, it's got to be reasonable. To be eligible for reimbursement, costs must comply with federal, state, and local laws, regulations, authorized, not prohibited under federal, state, territorial, tribal, or local government laws or regulations, consistent with the applicant's internal policy, regulations, procedures that apply uniformly to both federal awards and other activities of the applicant. I'll add to it that this needs to, whatever rules and regulations that are applicable to this disaster has to have been in place at the time of the disaster. I can remember in Katrina when they realized, oh, wait a minute, we didn't have an overtime policy. We didn't have a named storm overtime policy. Well, they tried to change it, get it after Katrina that they have an overtime policy. So when they pulled the policy up and say, wait a minute, you changed this prior to that. No, it's got to be what was in effect at the time. That goes with federal law. If anything is moved, changed, or updated within FEMA's federal policy on this, it doesn't matter. We're beholding to what's applicable now. Okay? So just keep in mind, whatever we follow, your pay policy, statutes and laws and policy and regulations, it's what's applicable on that, forgive me, May 6, 7. So just keep that in mind. To be eligible for reimbursement, costs must include deductions of insurance, proceeds, salvage, and purchase discounts. We covered this a minute ago. FEMA is going to be the last line of payment in this. So whatever kind of insurance proceeds, and they will look for it, you get, that's what you're going to have to, that's going to be discounted from that obligated price. Whatever salvage value you get will be discounted. If you get a purchase discount, you go buy stuff at Home Depot and they got it on 20% for Father's Day, whatever the case may be, that's going to be taken into consideration. So that's the last line of financial reimbursement. So, eligible cost. This includes force account of labor. Force account of labor is any full-time or part-time person that works for your organization. So I'm assuming everybody in this room, by the fact that you're in this room, you are considered force account labor. And what's important about this right now is in category A, if you're doing debris removal, regular and straight time as well as overtime is eligible. So whatever gets you to that overtime, your 40-hour a week and that overtime is eligible. Category B, only overtime is eligible. So up to that 40 hours for that week is not reimbursable, but any overtime will be. Category C through G, it's regular straight time and overtime just like A. So B is the only one that is overtime only. Materials, the cost for items used for applicant's inventory and from items purchased to make authorized repair to make scope of work are eligible. So I'm sorry, Water Association, we'll pick on you. So if y'all have meters on the shelf that y'all keep in stock, y'all have pipes or fittings, whatever y'all have in inventory, whatever y'all pull out of inventory, quantify that, keep track of that, and then that will be reimbursable expense. When you have to decide a price to that piece of equipment, I would go and look to see what it costs to replace it, because I don't know, you may have bought that tube in bulk 5 years ago, and of course the price now will be a vast difference. So use that the most current price, whatever it is, going to be able to restock that piece of equipment or that material. Applicant-owned equipment, or also we call it a force account equipment. This is going to be equipment that you own as the applicant. Again, there's codes. If it's we'll use a D4 tractor, there's going to be a cost code, and that is set by the government. You can contact us and we'll be happy to share it with you. We can also look at GSA's website, and they have the most up-to-date cost code. But if you can't find it on the website, just let us know. We can get it to you. You are going to have to keep logs and show that it was used. You also are going to have to tell us who the operator was, because most equipment does not run autonomously. Not yet, but most equipment does not run. Just make sure that you have that operator on that with that piece of equipment during the time it's being used. Contract. We talked about procurement just a little bit. Make sure your lawyers are involved in that and you're following proper procurement. I'm not an attorney, do not want to be an attorney. So make sure that you're following all applicable state and federal laws when you're doing your procurement. A rental, if you can rent a piece of equipment, and all I will need is that lease for that rental piece of equipment and proof of payment. Obviously, we're going to have to show a need for that piece of equipment, why you had to rent that piece of equipment, but it's a pretty simple, straightforward process of proof on that. So there's different types of projects. We talked about different types of categories, and now we're going to get into different types of projects. Pretty simple. You have small projects, large projects, improved projects, and alternate projects. So small projects and large projects, what makes that definition between a small project and a large project is its value. It's $1 million and some change. Just remember, once it breaks $1 million, you're falling into that large project category. And why there's a difference to that, a small project is written either on estimates or actuals, probably in this case actual, since we're so far past the disaster date, that they will be set. Once you sign that project, approve that project, to be obligated, it will be set. It's a budgetable expense. So if you've completed the work, you've got all the information, it's not a problem. You know what that cost of that work was. If you haven't completed that work, it can be done on estimate, and then that estimate, you'll have to live with it at the end of the day. Now, if you go over the estimate and cost, that's going to be on you. But on the flip side of that is if you're under that estimate on cost on a small project, that is something you can retain. Nobody's going to come try to get that back from you. FEMA does not change projects on small projects unless there is a errors and omission problem, there's an insurance change in some shape, form, or fashion, up or down. They will do a few minor things will cause it to change, but generally at the end of the day, once that small project is obligated, it's there, it's budgetable, and you don't have to think about what it's going to be at the end of the day. Now, on a large project, FEMA is going to write it, whether it's actuals or estimates. They're going to, once you sign it as it being an obligated project, do the work, and then once the work is complete, we'll collect all the documentation to support the work, send it back to FEMA. FEMA will look at it, and they are going to make adjustments. If you went over, they are going to give, if it's eligible, they are going to increase the obligated amount to get you to over that point, to the exact value. If you're under what was initially obligated, they're going to bring it back down. So it's a little bit of a sliding scale with that one. I use the term, the small project's budgetable. You know what funding you're going to get. Large project is not so budgetable. It could go either way, up and down, once it closes at the end of the day. Okay? So that's one of the thresholds. The other threshold, and you'll see it a little while later, a project, or the value of a project worksheet has to be over $4,100 for it to be written. If you did not get a category B, your emergency protective measures was only $3,000, it's less than $4,100, it won't be written. Okay? So it has to be over $4,100. Just to read the definition of this, so in case I missed something in my explanation, public assistance projects are processed at either a small or large project. If the project cost is less than the large project threshold, the project is processed as a small project. If the project cost equal or exceeds the large project threshold, the project is processed as a large project. Okay? So we went over this, but just to make sure I didn't miss anything, small project funding is based on work completed if available or initial cost estimate. Federal cost share is paid as soon as practical based on the complexity of the project. When the cost of work is less than $4,100, that work is not eligible. Large project initially approved based on estimate cost. Funding is based on documented and actual cost, and federal cost share is paid as work is accomplished. Other type of project we talked about, or I mentioned earlier, was an improved project. Typically, we want the cleanest thing to do is go back just like it was. If you lost a 20 by 40 building, you want to go back 20 by 40 in the same footprint on the same slab. But there are options. So an applicant performing restoration work on a damaged facility may use the opportunity to make improvements to the facility while restoring the facility to its pre-disaster function. The improvements must be approved by the state prior to my computer going to sleep. All right, break's over. So we're talking about improved projects. Applicant performing restoration work on damaged facility may use the opportunity to make improvements to the facility while restoring the facility to pre-disaster function. The improvements must be approved by the state. So if you come up with a plan that you want to do X, Y, Z, that it's going to be outside of the form and function that it did, or it's going to be inside the form and function, but it will change the design. You get your design together, you bring it to the state. We'll look at it and approve it if it falls into the guidelines. May require FEMA environmental and historical assessment. We'll get into FEMA's EHP program here in a little bit. And the applicant is responsible for the cost of improvements The federal funding is limited to the cost of restoration. So what that says simply is, we talked about being in the same footprint, being of the same form and function. They want that clean, a Nissan for a Nissan kind of thing going on there. But given that you don't need it, or that was old design and a new design would serve your community better, then you can say, I want to improve project, but they're going to cap it. Same thing with the vehicle we were talking about. If you lost that Nissan and you decide you want a Lamborghini, they're not going to give you the price for a Lamborghini. They'll give you the price and agree to the price of replacing a Nissan, and whatever you want to spend, if you decide you got to have that Lamborghini, whatever that delta is above Nissan to Lamborghini is going to be on the responsibility of you. Got it? There's going to be also a federal, there's going to be a cap to that, as well as a little reduction, and we'll discuss that in a minute. When restoration of a damaged facility or function does not serve, we'll change gears. This is an alternate project. When restoration of a damaged facility or function does not serve the public welfare, an applicant may use a public assistance grant for another public facility. The alternate project must be approved by FEMA prior to construction. A request for the alternate project must be made within 12 months of the recovery scoping meeting. I'll show you here on a timeline of how the progression of meetings will happen and what a recovery scoping meeting is. But key to this is just a year after that meeting, you have to identify anything that you want to do. So for this example, let's use the one that they provide here, or we provide. You lost this building or severely damaged. This building does not serve that function. It's a school. Maybe the school population shrunk to where you don't need that building anymore. You can combine it into another school, and that will serve the student body there. But you don't need to rebuild that school or repair that school. You want to use it for something else. So in this example, you're taking the funding that would be spent to repair or replace, and you're going to go buy something else with it, and in this case being school buses. This needs to be approved by FEMA, and that 12-month timeline to identify it is applicable. All alternate projects may be required an environmental assessment. That's going to be, we'll get into EHP here in a minute, but that could happen with anything. Federal funding is limited to a 90% of the federal share of the original project estimate or actuals. Okay. Which that means you have what's obligated, and then you have the 75%, and they're going to reduce it to 90%. Take another 10% off of the 75%. So federal funding is limited to 90% of the federal share of the original project estimate or actual alternate project cost. For state and local governments, are 75% for the P&P applicants utilizing the traditional alternate project program. So we're going to talk more about timelines. I've said earlier it was important, and it seems to be getting more and more important with FEMA nowadays. There's periods of performance. You hear them called POPs, POPs. Acronyms are everywhere. So what a period of performance is the start date's going to be that declaration date, so June 30th for this one, and the 6 months is going to be for your emergency work. So everything A and B is a 6 month. If you don't get it done in 6 months from June 30th, then you're going to need time extensions. For permanent work, that's category C through G, that's 18 months from the time of the declaration, which was June 30th, to get that accomplished. You can file for an extension on time. We'll go through who can and when they can do that now. So you can file if you're not through your debris pickup in 6 months and you need a time extension, you can ask for another 6 months to a grand total of 1 year from the declaration. That comes to us. I can sign and approve that, and we can get you up to 12 months. After 12 months, if your debris is still not picked up, the approval has to come from FEMA. I beg everybody in the state, do not let it get out of my control. If I can sign something and if I can get you a time extension, I will work with you. When it leaves our state, then it becomes an unknown. I'm not beating up on FEMA yet. I'm just saying the fact we're getting it out of our control. So try to stay in that time frame as best you can, because I can't guarantee it. And I'm starting to see a lot of things get denied, a lot of time extensions getting denied. So please stay within emergency work 6 months, 6 months, permanent work 18. I can grant another 6 months to emergency work. I can grant another 30 additional months, giving you 4 years for permanent work. Please, let's get things done before it has to go to another person outside of the state to make a decision. The regional administrator, that's the FEMA, head FEMA person for our region, which is out of Atlanta. The regional administrator may increase these time extensions on a case-by-case basis. If the deadline for any project has been reached without an approved time extension, no cost past that deadline will be eligible for funding. So if you're doing debris operations and you get to that 6 to 12 month, and you do not get approval to continue to do work, then everything from that day on after the time extension falls out will not be reimbursed. Special considerations. So we've kind of hit a lot on this here and there when we were going through this. Special considerations are issues other than program eligibility that could affect the scope of work and funding for a project. The issues include insurance. We talked about that. They will look at your insurance. You providing your insurance policy will be a requirement. FEMA has insurance specialists. They're going to look at the policy and they're going to determine what you legally should be getting from your insurance provider. They're going to assign a value, and that value is going to have to be upheld, or we're going to have to come up with a really good reason why you didn't get to that value with your insurance provider. Okay? Where that's coming from is we saw in disasters of the past where people would get a settlement from their insurance provider and they go, yeah, it's fine because whatever you don't pay, FEMA's going to cover. So FEMA got hip to that and said, no, we're not going to do that. You know, you're legally responsible, or you're legally supposed to get this from your provider. Why didn't you get it? So we've had to send applicants back to do more discussions, debates, and sometimes downright out fights with their insurance companies to get what they're supposed to be getting legally. Hazard mitigation is going to be an option for this if it was affected by this event. There's two different types of hazard mitigation, not to get too far off in the weeds, 404 and 406. We'll get into the details of it here in a little bit, but if something was touched by the disaster, we can, to a certain extent, provide additional funds to harden that, to make it to where it'll be safer and less likely to be affected by the next disaster. Environmental protection, we'll get into that in a minute. Floodplain management, also that, and historical preservation and cultural resources. Insurance, we talked about this. Actual anticipated insurance proceeds will be deducted from the eligible cost of facilities. All applicants are required to obtain and maintain insurance coverage on small insurable facilities as a condition of public assistance funding for flood damaged facilities located with a special flood hazard. So also if FEMA says, all right, you had $100,000 worth of damage, you had no insurance on it for whatever reason. You've never had damage there before, or FEMA has never come in and paid for damage on this facility before. They come in to do it now. They realize you don't have insurance or adequate insurance. FEMA's going to say, we're going to give you $100,000, but we're going to require you to keep $100,000 worth of insurance on this facility. So why do they do that? FEMA's goal is to pay for something once. They want to pay for it and not to pay for it again. They want to self-insure. They want us to self-protect that piece of property and not have to continually giving $1,000 and $1,000 and $1,000 over every event that comes through and happens. Now, I pay taxes like everybody else in this room, so if I'm wearing my taxpayer hat, I'm good with it. I like that. I think that's fine, and I understand that. I understand why they're going to do it. Of course, as your advocate, you know, we will do what we can to better serve you guys, but that is the reason for it. They don't want to pay for something twice. So if it's insurable, they pay for something, they're going to make sure whatever the federal government, us as taxpayers, have paid you to restore that facility or whatever is insurable, they want it to be protected for future events. Okay? So we talked about hazard mitigation just briefly, but the difference between hazard mitigation, PA hazard mitigation, which is also known as 406 mitigation, has to have happened or be something damaged during that event. So for this example, here's a roadway, a culvert, and it's pre-disaster. It's roads fine, culverts there and functioning, but after the disaster, the culvert's blown out, the roadway's blown out, completely gone. So we can come in at this point, and FEMA's thought process is, if I can fix this, and I can fix it at a cost savings benefit, and there's a whole calculation with a whiteboard and people with slide rulers trying to come up with what is reasonable, then they will fund hardening this. So in this example, they've come in, they just had a round culvert here, corrugated, whatever the case may be, come in and put it, say it's a concrete box culvert with wing walls. That's going to help direct the water down, not around the drainage structure, to keep from that road blowing out again. So this is something in this example that could be eligible for 406 mitigation. This includes windows and doors. If you lost a window on the side of your building, they can replace it and upgrade those, double pane, whatever the case may be, to harden that structure. This could be adding hurricane straps to the joists and roofs. So if there's something that you can think of, your engineer can think of, that would harden the facility that got damaged, it could be possible that we get mitigation. 404 mitigation is simply mitigation of something that was not affected by the disaster. There's a whole other office within our agency that has a pot of federal money that they can pull from if you can get approval to buy other things that help you pre-disaster, if you will. Environmental, historical, and preservation compliance. This is a must. You're going to pretty much in every project, these guys are going to look at it, get their eyeballs on it in some shape, form, or fashion. You have got to make sure they're happy. They will stop everything. They will stop everybody from working. They will stop the ground from moving. They will stop everything in their tracks. Seeing this is mostly a debris storm, the only time I could really see them getting involved in this is maybe with root balls or something like that. When ground disturbance happens, then you'll see them get involved. So EHP is something we'll need to make sure we're in compliance with. This includes MDEQ permitting, things of that nature. So as long as we're keeping these guys happy, we're in good shape. Okay. All FEMA funded projects must comply with a variety of EHP laws, regulations, and executive orders. EHP review is done prior to funding to ensure compliance with applicable federal laws. EHP review is a collaboration between FEMA, the state applicants, tribal entities, and local organizations. And construction of new facilities, alternate projects, modification, expansion, or mitigation of existing facilities may require more extensive EHP review. We'll work with you. Biggest thing in this disaster, make sure you get with MDEQ on permitting your landfills. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you turn any dirt, if you move any dirt, it's got to be through them. If there is a root ball and you pull that root ball up and that crater there that you need to fill in, if it's not, you're not able to fill it in with the dirt right there at the site, you have to go truck in a load of dirt. It's got to be a permitted site. It's got to be a permit. State of Mississippi is a mining state. We have to have permits for our mines. So we need to get permitted sites or permitted areas. If you have any questions on that, just let us know. We'll get you straightened out on it. Environmental protection to ensure all practical means are used to protect, restore, and enhance the environmental. FEMA projects must comply with all applicable laws and regulations, including National Environmental Policy Act, Magnuson Act, Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, 44 CFR Parts 9 and 10. Floodplain and wetland management. Any project within or affected the floodplain or wetland must be reviewed to ensure that it meets the requirement of several federal laws and executive orders. EO, our executive order, 11988, Floodplain Management, EO 11990, Protection of Wetlands, and the Clean Water Act are just a few. So, have any questions, just let us know. We'll let you know what we need to do and who we need to get involved. Historical Preservation and Cultural Resources, the National Historic Preservation Act requires FEMA grantees and applicants to assess potential effects to historic and cultural resources such as historical buildings, structures, districts, archaeological and tribal sites, and objects and artifacts. Historic Preservation and Cultural Resources, FEMA, the state, and an applicant work together to identify and address historic preservation issues before approval of funding for a public assistance project. May require consultation from the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, Tribal Historic Preservation Office, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. Record keeping, this is going to be a big one that you're going to need to do. It's a little easier nowadays, going back to Katrina when it was papers, and for the first year there was not that much electricity around. Everything was done in paper. So that was a little tricky to keep up with. But nowadays, pretty much everything's done electronically. All your documentation and all things are saved electronically. We'll get into our forms of web-based databases that we'll be using. But all of this documentation will be somewhat electronic, so it's a little easier to keep up with. But applicants are required to maintain complete and accurate documentation by project for all disaster-related costs. Documentation must be maintained a minimum of 3 years after the applicant closeout. So if you closed out a project, your first project, and it takes you 2 years to close out your last project, you've got to keep all those until you're done as an applicant. So things in the documentation be force count labor, force count equipment, materials rented in contract. Again, we'll talk about database here, and the databases we'll use in a minute, and you'll see where all that's all going to be stored anyway. So it's going to be, you're going to have that maintained forever, or at least until they keep the program going. Force count labor examples would be an applicant's payroll policy. This applicant benefit calculation worksheet, the applicant's complete employee list, should include employee rate and whether they're exempt or a non-exempt employee on overtime, timesheets and payroll records, and copies of canceled checks or proof of direct deposit. Examples of force count equipment is the applicant's equipment listing, equipment documentation sheets, employee timesheets reflecting equipment operated time, date, and of use, FEMA schedule of equipment rates. Force count materials, material summary record, applicant's material inventory list dated prior to the disaster, material requisition sheets if available, invoices for material purchased and put in inventory, and copies of check paying the invoices. Just remember, it's a reimbursement program, so we have to have all this information. Procurement, I don't want to get too deep off into this. I made my non-lawyer statement a minute ago, and I just encourage you to get with your lawyer if you need to do procurement. Make sure it's all done properly. Just make sure the federal, state, and local requirements, whichever the most stringent one is being followed. We can get some training from FEMA, but nothing's going to beat making sure that you have someone, an attorney that's going to follow you and make sure you're doing it right. Rental equipment, as we talked about a minute ago, rental equipment, we need copies of that rental agreement, the invoices, and the proof of payment. Okay? So, talk a minute about appeals. So what happens if FEMA comes to town and we show them all your damages, and they start writing a project worksheet, and they make the comment that's not an eligible expense for whatever reason. We try to work, we will negotiate on the local side here, and we'll try to mitigate that the best we can. But if we just get to a point where they say, nope, not eligible, they're going to give what's called a determination memo, or a DM. That DM, once you receive it, or you click on it on the database system that I'll show you or talk about, then you have a time frame, and it's pretty stringent. You'll have a 60-day time frame once you open that, or once you receive that in mail, and to collect documentation and make an argument That argument will then go to us, go to FEMA. We have another 60 days to look at it, to try to strengthen your argument, or do whatever we can to carry your flag a little higher. But we have 60 days from from that point. Long story short, we have 120 days to get it to FEMA region for this first appeal. Now, they'll take a look at it. They'll look at your argument. They'll look at the policies and regulations, and they'll issue a determination on it. This says 90 days, but they'll get back to you when they want to get back to you on that, to be blunt. That you'll get that response back. Okay? So once you get that response back, it's either approved in part, or denied. Now, if you're not approved at 100% of what you think is eligible, and you want to go and say, no, I still think it's eligible, I still think we need to try to get this funding through FEMA, then you can do a second appeal. Same rules apply. Once you get that DEM or that decision from that first appeal, you have 60 days to get me the information that supports it. It needs to be different. We don't need to cut and paste the same argument that you made the first time. It needs to be additional. It needs to be different. It needs to be changed a little bit and be a little stronger. And then 60 days, you get it to me. 60 days, I get it to FEMA. But this time, instead of going to Region 4 in Atlanta, it's going to go to the headquarters in Washington. They will look at it for the second appeal. And then they will make a determination. When they make a determination, and then that's it. There is no action after that. Whatever their determination is final. There is options given certain criteria that you can arbitrate, and you can go to an arbitration panel, which is 3 sitting federal judges. They will be picked off from an arbitration board listing, and then FEMA will have a time to say what they want to say. You as the applicant, us as the grantee, we all have our options to talk to the panel, and then once that happens, then they will make a ruling. That is final, once they make a ruling. So there's options if you just don't agree with FEMA and what they've decided. Best thing to do is just get with us. We'll sit down and talk to you about what's the best way to approach it. If you think it's a strong case, I will tell you. If we think it's not too strong of a case, we'll tell you that too. But we're also, whatever you decide, we'll help you make that next step. Okay? Time limits, we've spoke about this several times, but applying for public assistance, I said that RPA, request for public assistance, has got to be done within 30 days of the declaration, meaning that July 30th is the end of the time. We need to get that done by then, okay? I always ask everybody, get it done by this afternoon, get it knocked out. It does not take 60 seconds to do. Applicant must submit all damages within 60 days of the recovery scoping meeting. I'll show you on this little timeline coming up here in a minute that where that 60 day will start, but there is a timeline on that anything that you have damaged must be identified in 60 days. Sandy Recovery Act, after Hurricane Sandy came through, they made some changes. One of them being debris removal operations, straight time, and forced count labor, or straight time of forced count labor is eligible. An applicant can retain any earnings from recycling. Also with that is what they call Section 428. It's kind of a mix between improved projects and alternate projects, but what essentially happens is you can take that funding and move it to whatever else you want, as long as it's an eligible expense and as long as it's mitigating to future disasters. So to read it, grants based on estimates, they're capped, cost overrun absorbed by applicant, underrun can be used by applicant for specific mitigation uses, must be approved by FEMA. Applicant may consolidate multiple projects in one project worksheet. FEMA may accept applicant's license engineer cost estimate. Must be very sure of cost, overruns, and permanent work is common. So for an example of this, we have an applicant who is taking several projects for buildings that they're not going to be rebuilding. And these buildings will be instead of rebuilding those buildings, they're going to take the funds that FEMA deem the funding would be for the building to be replaced, and we're starting to put those funds into a bucket, and that bucket is filling up with 2 or 3 different other projects. And what that money is going to pay for this particular applicant is going to be an emergency operations center and a distribution center. So you can take all the funding from all these other projects and eligible work and use that for something centralized, something different. Okay? So like I said, it's kind of a mix-up of all the other alternate and improved projects. But the biggest thing to remember, if you decide to do that, that funding is capped. If you're going to go over that, you need to know where the funding is going to come from. But also, if you go under that, then FEMA says you can keep it, but you're going to have to use it for some other sort of mitigating cost that's going to better the community and make it safer. For example, in that scenario, what they did, there was an applicant that had a big facility that was gifted to them by a company that was leaving. That facility was damaged, and instead of repairing it, to do some stuff different, but they had a lot of funding left over on that, so they ended up buying a lot of stuff, several fire trucks, several pieces of equipment for the county, different things that makes that county stronger and better today. So there's options out there. I don't see maybe in this one that's going to be as big of an option, but in the future, that might be something you want to consider to do. But we can help you walk through anything like that if you see that applies to y'all. Also, debris removal operations, and we've gone over that. So we talked about databases and things that we're going to use for this disaster. Now, the FEMA database is what's going to be called the grants portal. If you've been in it, you know about it. If you haven't, let us know. We'll help you navigate it. It's some people like it, some people don't, but it will store all your documentation. You will be able to follow the progression of the worksheet as it's going through FEMA's process, and it will notify you on things that need to happen. A lot of things, a lot of meetings that will be set up will be going through that, and you can also set up to be notified when your project moves, when it gets obligated, when it does this or that. So biggest thing, though, that it's a good system for is that's where all your documentation is going to be shared. When you're sending documentation to FEMA to write your project worksheet, it's going to be uploaded into this, and it'll be there for future references. So it's a good program for what it is. Is it the smoothest, maybe the most user-friendly? I guess that's a matter of opinion. But it's there, and we have to use it. And if you don't have a login for this, let us know, and we'll get you in on it. Okay. To submit your request for public assistance on RPA, go through Grants Portal, and if you've already got an account, when you sign into it, the big banner at the top says your area has been deemed for a disaster, federally declared disaster. Click this banner, and it'll go through the system to get your RPA in. If we got hiccups, we got anything else, let us know. We got a paper copy. We can get you to fill out the information, and we can hold your spot. If for some reason it does not have this banner up there, you can go through your organizational profile, and about 2/3 of the way down the screen, you'll see event profiles, and you can click on that, and you'll be able to go and file on that. So it's not rocket science, but if there's any confusion, let us know. If you do not have an account, contact us. We'll get you set up. Just have stuff like your name, your tax ID, your DUNS number, point of contact, their position, phone number, address, email address, such as that, basic stuff, and then we'll get you access into the grants portal. And once that RPA is approved, then you'll be starting to get contacted, whether it's email or phone calls, by FEMA, by MEMA, and we're going to start setting up different series of meetings. There'll be several of them, and a lot of them are check boxes. They've got to do it. So just get ready for it to start moving once that trigger is pulled. So here is all the different phases and the tracks that'll happen. But essentially, once you hit the RPA, you're going to get a contact set up for an exploratory meeting. and they're going to call, and they have a list of questions they're going to read off to you. Just be patient, get comfortable, and just get ready to answer the questions. We're going to be on every call. We're going to try to be with you or on every call that you have with FEMA. So if you have any questions or concerns, let us know, and we'll be happy to walk you through anything. During this exploratory call, the PDMG is going to explain the PA program, discuss the damages that you have, not in great detail at this point, but discuss some of the damages, introduce damage inventory, discuss documentation, discuss scheduling, scoping meeting. Scoping meeting is not this meeting, but the next one, but you're also going to have another meeting about damage inventory. So damage inventory is going to start getting a little bit deeper into what your actual damages were, and getting not only your head wrapped around what all the damages are, but ours as the state's head wrapped around your damages, and the FEMA person, get them familiar with your damages so we can continue the process. Now, the recovery scoping meeting is the one I really want to just take a second and make sure you understand this. That once this, and they'll say this is a recovery scoping meeting, so there won't be any confusion about it. Once this meeting takes place, that is when that clock starts on the 60 days to identify all your damages and bring it to FEMA's attention. So from that date, put it on your calendar, because that's the deadline to let them know what all your damages are. So during this meeting, you'll discuss inventory, damage inventory, your documentation discussed, special considerations discussed. That 60-day calendar is discussed, and site inspections are discussed and scheduled if needed. So once that recovery scoping meeting happens, then that's when the process and the projects are going to start happening. It's going to be at different rates, right? Some of them are going to start immediately. Now, you're welcome to decide what the priority is. You know, our priority is to get this documented and this project worksheet and this project worksheet and this project worksheet done. And we'll try to, meet you as best we can to see if we can get that done, whether it be the largest cost or that be whatever the circumstances are. You can set priorities in this. But it really starts to flow. This is not going to be the last meeting by a long shot. There will be a ton of meetings. Some of them are going to be scheduled maybe weekly if you got enough movement and need there. It may be every 2 weeks. It varies depending on your need and your, quite frankly, your availability. So who's going to be your applicant agent? Who that person is needs to understand the program elements to a degree. Don't get caught up in it. We're going to help you and walk you through it the whole time, but they do need to have some sort of understanding with it. Familiar with the computer is a big one. Be sure that they have got a great understanding of basic computer operations. Well organized and readily available. This is not something you want to give to someone who's already wearing a dozen hats. You want to make sure they have the bandwidth to do this. It will be time consuming. And the delivery model is FEMA has got their structure and the way they're going to do it, and they're not going to deviate from a lot of it. So just some of it's time consuming, some of it's frustrating, but it is what it is, and we're just going to have to go through it to get you where you need to go. Pace is going to be a priority in this. I told you there's a lot of time frames. That's why I say don't give it to this responsibility to someone that's already wearing a bunch of hats. Chris, I'll pick on you a minute. It's not, maybe Chris isn't the best person to have that responsibility to. You may want to give it to the administrator or one of the clerks or somebody who's actually seeing these invoices coming in, because it's an extra step. If we're dealing with Chris on it every day and we say we need invoices, well, he has to stop and he has to go back to courthouse or wherever that office is, try to get it in front of them, try to get this information, then they give it back to him, and then he's got to give it, whatever makes more sense. Whoever that person that needs to be involved, take as many of those chains out, those steps out as humanly possible. And that's it. In the summary, the Public Assistance Program assists in the restoration of a community infrastructure. It's to get you back to normal, get you back to where you were. Hopefully, in some cases, we can get you back a little better than the way you were. It is a supplemental cost reimbursement program. I know y'all will be out a lot of money up front, but we are going to get you some of it back. We're going to get you as much back as you're legally eligible to get. It just takes a little time. Right now, I've got 2 fresh new disasters this year. This one we're looking at, 12 million, 13 million. That winter storm that started in January, still knee deep into that. That's going to be $500 or $600 million. So there's a lot of funding that goes out and comes through a small office, and we're doing it the best we can. We'll get money to you as quick as we can, but patience is certainly something that's you're going to have to work with us on, and we'll do the best we can by you as quick as we can. That's it. And with that, I appreciate all your time.